Hey guys, welcome back to this channel. Today I would like to talk about an article that I read like few weeks ago, and we talk about the Economic Commission for Latin America. Um, it's an article that have been published in Le Monde Diplomatique, which is a French newspaper, and written by Baptiste Alberton. And if I remember right, he's a PhD student, and I'm Dominique Correra, and she's a journalist. And the name of this article is L'institution qui a inventé l'Amérique latine, and that we can translate into the institution that created Latin America. And there is a Spanish translation of this article, so if you are Spanish speakers, I really advise you to have a look on it. And it's an article on a topic that we really don't cover that much, I guess, in French media, but I also think in international media as well. It's an article on the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America, so something quite precise, I would say. And it's really cool because like this institution is really important in the history of theory of international development, because it was there that was created two of the main heterodox thoughts on international development, which is like the structuralist approach on international development. And this article is really cool because I think it helps us understand what's the position of international institution inside the realm of world politics. Because like most of time when we look on the media, when we look about the news of the United Nations, for instance, we can have the feeling, and most of the time in the media, it's how it's presented, that international organization is that it's a space where states interact, exchange, and create cooperation and coordination on different issue of politics. But like this articles explain one side of the power of international institution, which is like the creation of knowledge and the creation of perspective about world politics, like the constructions of the reality of world politics. Like this articles present like this ECLAC, which was created in 1948. Yes, that's it. The creation of this institution was to help Latin America economies to develop and to implement, and to not to supervise, but to assist member states in their economic policy, but also to gather statistics and to create knowledge about the economy of Latin America. In this article, more specifically, talk about the career of the second executive secretary of this institution, which was Raul Prebic, and this guy was really important in the field of international development theory, because he, as the executive secretary of this organization, he creates a new paradigm that we call nowadays the structuralist approach of international development. And yeah, like this guy is quite famous because he really recreates at the time the way we think about international development, and mostly the way we think about international development. He was appointed executive secretary of this international organization between 1950 until 1963. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, like it's he really have an interesting career path, and it's interesting how his administration creates an alternative intellectual path to understand international development. He was an economist, diplomat, and an administrator, especially during the 1930s, during the Argentine dictatorship. And he also worked as a lobbyist for the Landlord Association of Argentina. So yeah, quite a conservative background. This was during this time as an administrator, especially while he was dealing with the consequences of the 1929 financial crisis in Argentina. He understood that actually the free market politics cannot really upgrade the economic position of his country, because like he realized that the economy of Argentina and mostly the economy of Latin America countries at the time was mostly based on agriculture and and exploitation of raw materials. And like for him, the free market politics was not the best strategy that Argentina could follow at the time. And like he understood that the position of Argentina and more generally Latin America economy in the world economy was in a position of periphery, and he understood this with two factors. Like the first one being that since those countries only mostly sell on the global markets raw materials and agricultural goods, their value tends to diminish compared to the capital-intensive goods that are produced by rich nations, more specifically Western countries. And this quite makes sense because, like, if you're selling the crops, if you're selling raw materials, it's the value of those products are more or less stable through times. While if you specialize in capital-intensive products like machine, high technology industries, like you can upgrade the value of your good thanks to innovation. Like the value of a potato will be the value of a potato through times, but if you produce a car, you can sell more and more complex car. Like the idea behind this is that if at time T you need, I don't know, 10 tons of potato to buy one car, like 10 years after this you will need 20 tons of potato to buy the same car, because the value of this car will rise compared to the value of this potato. He also understood especially during diplomatic negotiation, that peripheric country, as he called it, in a way lower political position than rich and developed country to negotiate international rules for the global economy. And he understood this during international negotiation in London in the 30s to cope with the consequence of the financial crisis. And he understood that as a representative of the Argentinian government, he didn't really have that much leverage over the delegation of the UK in particular, because he wanted to go there to ask for a better price of agricultural goods, and he understood that this was not going to happen, and that the Western economy was really not inclined to accept to lower the position regarding of those peripheral countries. And Prebisch had the opportunity to write down his idea when the Economic Commission for Latin America asked him to draft a report on the main problem of Latin America. It's the name of this report. And this document is the foundation of what we call nowadays the Prebisch-Singer hypothesis, which is, as I explained just before, like this degradation of exchange of the term of trade between developing nation and developed economies regarding the price of manufactured goods relative to the price of agricultural goods. And he presented this report at La Havana in 1949, and he developed an alternative strategy to develop the industrialization of Latin America than the alternative regarding to the orthodox theory developed by Western economy, which was more or less saying that, okay, you need to open your economy to the rest of the world. It's like, okay, you will specialize in maybe agricultural goods, but it's better for you to specialize in agricultural goods, because you will specialize in this and have the possibility to buy more of manufactured goods from developed economy. But Prebisch and Singer show broadcast through this idea, and actually no, there is an asymmetry between the international trade for those goods. And 1 year after he published his report, he was appointed executive secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America, and he really wanted to transform this international organization into a laboratory to find the way for Latin America to industrialize itself, and to find public policy made for and by Latin America. His strategy was to limit the exposition of Latin America to the world economy to avoid this over-specialization in products that won't gain value on the international markets. And he was really a big advocate of trade barrier and international. This went well throughout the 50s. It was the moment where the industrial product of different countries like Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, or Mexico rise up compared to the first half of the century, where those countries were specialized in agriculture. But the problems start to arise in the 60s while the Latin America industry were not competitive enough to sell their product on the international market, and this created a problem because in order to industrialize, those economy had to import a lot of machine and other manufacturing goods, and it creates a paradox because by following an industrial pattern in order to improve their national production, actually they rely more and more on international markets to purchase the mean for them to develop their industries. This situation creates a huge trade imbalance, and the public debt really started to skyrocket at the time. In addition to this, there was more and more social conflict because the industrialization of this country was not fast enough, and more and more people from the rural area migrate to these industrialized urban centers in order to find a job and to have better welfare. But the problem is, because this industrialization was not fast enough, a lot of people will end up unemployed, and a lot of social conflict was creating because of this situation. And this is the second time of the development of the British paradigm over international developments that we call nowadays structuralist. If you follow class of international developments, you probably know this theory through this name. And he understood that in order to promote industrialization, he cannot only rely on international trade, but he also needs to develop his own domestic consumptions. And that's the moment where he advocates for a huge and massive redistribution of wealth in order to improve the capacity of the people to consume the products that were not enough competitive on the international markets, in order to find domestic consumptions rather than these international consumptions. And it was at the time in the Economic Commission for Latin America that there was more and more people who contested this approach. And one of the main critiques of this structuralist approach to international development was a sociologist inside the Economic Commission for Latin America. His name was Enzo Faletto, and his co-worker Fernando Enrique Cardoso. I'm sorry for Spanish speakers if I destroyed their names. And they create an alternative theory which was called the theory of the dependence. To summarize, the idea is that industrialization in Latin America didn't really change the distribution of power between periphery country and Western country, because at the end it was Western multinational corporation who was investing in the industrialization of Latin America, and they end up having the power over those main production. So they just explained that they explained that the approach of Prebisch was mostly to put the asymmetric power from outside the country and to put it within the country. And this theory of dependence advocates they mostly advocate for a socialist revolution because for them it's the only way to help Latin America to develop its economy outside of the imperialism of the West. This article made me remember another scientific article that I had to read during my master, and that if it's not in your program, I really advise you to read these articles. The name is The Politics, Power and Pathologies of Internationalization, written by Michael Barnett and Martha Finmore, and they explain that one of the power of organization is to produce knowledge and normative view over international politics. They are both professor of international politics at the University of Washington in the Elliott School of International Affairs, and this article is quite old. It was published in the 1999, and but like for me, it's one of the most interesting articles to understand what is the role of international organization in the contemporary world politics. The question that this article raises is to know if international organizations really do what their creator intend to do, and to understand what is the natures of international organization powers, and they're talking about international organization pathologies, but in the articles it's refer mostly about the deviation that those organizations take over their legal and their original purpose. They use a sociological institutionalism to understand how those bureaucracy create and redefine their purpose through their cultures, through their roles, how they reinvent their roles, how they appropriate for themselves their roles. Like in the case of the Latin America Commission for Economy, where we have one executive secretary who reinterprets his mission as a way to promote the industrialization of Latin America outside the opening of their markets to international trade. The article explained that the power of international organization lie on the rational legal legitimacy that they have and their monopoly over expertise. And this is what we find on the example that the article of Le Monde Diplomatique shows. We have an administration who take the ownership of their analysis over their economic situation of Latin America, and who promote a certain vision of this economies, explaining that international free market cannot help those economy to develop themselves wrong of force, but if it's wrong or false, it's not really important, but here it's important that they create knowledge, they appropriate for themselves the understanding of the situation, and this was actually a powerful driver of the economic policy in Latin America throughout the 50s. And they create a classification of the different type of power that international organizations have over world politics. And the first one is classification, and which refer to the idea that they can frame a problem around specific nomenclatures that will provide a specific understanding of the situation. For instance, you have a person in a situation of humanitarian crisis. This person will receive specific treatments because of his status, and this status is defined by a classification produced by international organizations. This is interesting because, for the case of privilege, we understand that the industrialization of Latin America became classified as a mean for international development, which was not really the case before that. Before that, the idea was to have this linear path throughout development that Western economies was produced. And the idea is that countries will open themselves to the international trade, and they will scale up their economy thanks to this development. And here we have an administration which say, no, we classify, we understand the situation differently. We put another administrative understanding of the situation of this economic development, and they put other objectives inside this classification. The second power is the power of fixing meaning, and this is explained by the articles that naming and labeling social context is one of the prerogative of international administration. It's close to the idea of classification, but classification is mostly the idea of legal definition. Here is the idea that by labeling social context with a specific meaning, they can change the global perception of this meaning. And for instance, here we have the labeling of international trade as being not something which helped the promotion of economic development of Latin America, but something which hampered their development. One example of this can be found in terrorism. Like, is terrorism defined as an act of war, or is it defined as a criminal act? And the way we label this phenomenon, like terrorism, the way we label it as security threat or as a criminal fact, will produce different administrative actions. Like if you analyze it as a risk for your national security, it makes sense to bomb another country to get rid of this threat. But if you understand it as a criminal act, you totally change the perspective and you use different means to act upon it. And it's one of the role of international organization to label social things. And the last power that Barnett and Finmore framed for international organization is the power of diffusion of norms. And this is, for instance, something that we found a lot during the pandemic times, where we had the World Health Organization, which diffused what is a good conduct for the pandemic or a bad conduct of the pandemic. And this international administration had the monopoly over the diffusion of these specific things that they were dealing with. And this is really interesting in the case of the administration of Prebisch, because like they broadcast with reports what is a good way of developing Latin American economies, which was like going out of the international dependence vis-a-vis the West. So yeah, I found this article by Le Monde Diplomatique really cool, because like it really talk about a lot of different things. Like it explained how a theory of international development emerged, how it was created, and I think it's always cool to understand the social context of the development of theory that help us to analyze the world. Here it was created in a very specific context of an international organization in the 50s, which was promoting the economic development of Latin America. And it also shows that how the powers of this international organization, the Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean, was sustained, how they developed their administrative power, and they did it by producing knowledge, by producing expertise over the economic development of Latin America. And even if the activities of this organization was really limited during the 70s and 80s because of the development of fascist government in Latin America. Their ideas for development, which is the idea of structuralism and the idea of dependence, is still really widespread, especially in the academia. And I hope, like, if you are a French speaker or a Spanish speaker, you can read these articles, and really recommend you to have a look to these articles. Unfortunately, it's not translated to English. Maybe it will, because like Le Monde Diplomatique have a lot of articles in foreign language, and you can find really a lot of cool critique articles in a lot of different language. I saw like they have articles in Russian, German, Serbian, and in a lot of language. And yeah, I really advise you to have a look to these articles written by Barnett and Finmore, especially if you're in a master or a bachelor of international politics, because it will really give you a new understanding of what is an international organization. Because like most of the time we tend to understand them as just an empty shell who are just echoing the will of states, and those two articles really help us to understand, no, actually, what is the place of international organization. It's not to say that it's not to over-interpret the powers of international organization. Yeah, like of course they cannot do everything, but they cannot not do nothing either. And I think it's cool to understand the nature of their powers, like depicted in by these institutionalist sociologic perspectives, which cover like the production of cultures by those administration. Okay, guys, thank you for watching, and we will see you again for another vlog next time I found something interesting to talk about on world politics or world economy. Bye.